this is wonderful. It's like the colors, the streamers. Let me see those streamers. There you go. The lilies, the new piano. The timpani. Ugh. Timpani's my favorite. I love timpani. You know, all of you here, my bow tie, which is awesome, even though it's tied incredibly poorly this morning. Oh yeah, sorry. The rest of the band as well. Yeah. You guys too. Got it. The 4-year-old that I saw out there earlier with this just adorable little Easter dress on. Oh, man, it's all just fantastic. The king is dead. Long live the king. Yeah, this is Easter, and it's awesome. But it was a long, dark road to get here. That's the truth that we have to face at Easter. It was a dark road getting here. The Bible, of course, was written after the fact of the resurrection. It was written from the perspective of those who already knew about the events of Easter, who already knew that death had been destroyed. And that confidence, that post-Easter confidence, is what allows the biblical writers to be truthful about just how dark a road it was to get to this day. After the empty tomb, the lens of the resurrection is imposed upon the story, but that story was pretty dark beforehand. Before the empty tomb, the story starts with fear, and it goes on to resistance, and then misunderstanding, and then defensiveness, and then more fear, and doubt, and organized opposition, and betrayal, and denial, and death, and cold, dark body in the tomb. And then the women see the empty tomb. Then the angels say, with some awkward disdain in their tone, I might note, "Why are you looking for the living here among the dead? He's not here, but has risen up," which is exactly what he told you would happen, say the angels. After that empty tomb, the whole dark story looks entirely differently. Out of the shadows, the light of Easter is then overlaid onto that dark story. The story starts not only with fear, but also with astounding trust. When the mother of Jesus says, "Nevertheless, Lord, not my will, but yours be done." The whole dark story continues. The resistance to Jesus' message of loving enemies runs alongside those who are willing to leave everything to follow him. The misunderstanding of those in power, born of self-preservation, is matched by the clarity of those who have nothing to lose and thus follow Jesus. The blind see, the lame walk, the rich release their debts and their friends, and they find friends. The defensiveness of the scribes and the chief priests is overshadowed by the vulnerability and faithfulness of the women who follow Jesus all the way to the end. Jesus' own doubt is released into trust when he echoes Mary's words and says, "Not my will, but yours be done." So the fear, doubt, organized opposition, betrayal, denial, death, cold gray body lying in a tomb, all of it, it doesn't go away. It's not denied. This whole Easter story isn't gaslighting, but it is all told and untold and retold through the reality of the empty tomb, through the chorus of the angels, "Rise up!" When you think about Easter, though, it's interesting, right? It's kind of crazy because there are no eyewitness accounts to what happened. This thing that changed the world, this thing that saved the world, no one sees the moment that death loses its grip on Jesus. The moment God breathes new and eternal life into that corpse. The moment he opens his eyes and then rises up. None of that is revealed in the story. None of that is shown in the story. There are no eyewitnesses to this globally transforming event. No one sees the hand of God roll the stone away from the tomb or even sees Jesus emerge from it alive. As a matter of fact, as first light dawns on that first day, there is nothing but an empty tomb. An empty tomb which could be explained in a lot of different ways. Maybe someone else got there even earlier than the women did and took the body in order to bury it properly, respectfully. Maybe the Romans changed their minds and decided not to allow a decent burial for this dangerous so-called king. So they came and grabbed his body and tossed it into a common pit, along with all the other people that they crucified. No, an empty tomb didn't prove anything. The women stood there utterly confused, not because they were confused about whether Jesus was dead. They knew dead well and good. But they stood there because they were confused about who could have taken the body away. Furthermore, after Jesus is risen up, he doesn't go to publicly proclaim that he is risen. He doesn't go back to stand in the courtyard of the temple where he taught so many times before and where the crowd yelled, "Crucify him!" He doesn't go back there to hang around the crowds again after the resurrection and say, "I'm back." He doesn't go to Pilate and say, "Dude, you killed me, but here I am." And he doesn't go to Pilate's boss, to everyone's boss, really, to Rome, to Caesar, and say, "Death, crucifixion, is that all you've got?" No. With God just having conquered the unconquerable reality of death, having just proven once and for all that violence can be overcome with love, having shown that you can fight the system and win, having just changed the course of human history, having just saved humankind, Jesus appears to a small group of women. He showed up to those who dared to follow him. And the ones who followed him were the women, and they followed him all the way to the end. They were the only ones who actually stuck with him, and they are the first ones to see, to experience the risen Christ. But the women, they didn't spend the last night of Jesus' life arguing about which one of them was the greatest. The women didn't threaten to undermine the whole of Jesus' mission by drawing swords to fight off the Romans. The women didn't deny him 3 times before the cock crowed. The women were the ones who dared to care for the body of a man who had just been executed as an enemy of the state, a man apparently more threatening to Rome than a different man who had attempted to overthrow the government. The women publicly displayed their connection to a man with whom anyone concerned about their own safety should not be associated. Yeah, the women are the first ones to see the stone rolled away, to see the empty tomb, to see that Jesus is not among the dead, but he is risen up. Now, of course, we didn't read the whole Easter story today, just that first part of it from the Gospel of Luke. In the rest of Luke and the other Gospels, we learn that the women were not just the first ones to see the stone rolled away and the body gone, and to hear the angels from heaven, but Mary Magdalene, at least, was also the first one to see the revivified Lord. Just outside the tomb that Easter morning, Mary looks right at him. She hears his voice, but she still doesn't know it's him, because dead men don't talk, so she doesn't understand. And then finally, he speaks her name, Mary. And she becomes the first human being to know that everything has changed, that the dark story of the world has been overlaid and untold and retold in the light of the resurrection. Then later on that same day, Jesus walks with 2 other disciples on the road to Emmaus. They also look right at him. They see him and hear his voice. But dead men don't walk along the road with you, so they don't recognize him. Finally, he breaks bread and blesses it. And they join Mary in knowing that nothing will ever be the same. And then in the middle of that night, with his extended group of followers huddled fearfully behind locked doors, Jesus appears among them. They looked right at him. But dead men don't stand among you, so they don't recognize him. So he shows them the signs of his execution, and they join Mary and Joanna and Salome and the other Mary and the rest of the women, the 2 other disciples from Emmaus, in knowing that it ain't over. What these first few days after the resurrection show us is not just that Jesus came back, but that he came back for us. He came back for us. After God says, "Rise up," Jesus doesn't go to the crowds in the temple or Pilate or Caesar. He's already subverted their power from below, robbing them of the fear and hopelessness on which their power was based. No, rather, he came back to those who dared to follow him. A few women, a couple of guys, a gathering of fishermen, at least one tax collector even, probably a bunch of field workers as well. His followers, they sure didn't account for much, but they did follow him. Well, not that all of them were very good at following him, of course. Judas's betrayal still haunts us. Peter's denial is still part of the story. They all forsook him and fled. Our less dramatic, but no less tragic denials are also forever part of the story. No, those original 12 men might not have been very good at following him, and we may not be very good at following him today, but Jesus came back for us. You know, maybe it sounds a bit more weighty if I say it in biblical Greek. It's good and right to say that God is love. Theos agape estin. But the source of faith and freedom is to say Theos agape estin pro me. God is love for me. The deep and abiding reality of Easter is that God came back for you, for me, for us. God said, "Rise up for you and to you." That's right. God says, "Rise up to you." As the light of the resurrection shines upon the story of Jesus and transforms it from fear into astounding faith, from resistance into eagerness, from misunderstanding into clarity, from complacency into generosity, from defensiveness into faithfulness, from doubt to trust, from life to death, that resurrection also shines upon our lives and retells our stories. When we dare to follow him, there is nothing in our lives that cannot be transformed. There are some things that we know we want transformed, right? Grief, loneliness, anxiety, poverty, hardness of heart, compromises that we're not proud of. We want all of that transformed. But there are also some things that we are quite happy with, and we may not want them transformed, even though we know they need to be. Wealth that just insulates us from others, a type of justice from which we think we benefit, but which actually pulls us all down. Acceptance by the folks that seem to really matter, but who are actually just the current winners of a shell game in social status. When we dare to follow him, there is nothing in our lives that cannot and will not be transformed. So, rise up, people. Rise up!